We'll resume our discussion from the first canto, 15th chapter, and we'll start from verse 32. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udirayet Rashtraprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloker Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Ma Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namine. So the 15th chapter is titled The Pandavas Retire Timely. And in the chapter so far, we have seen Arjun returning from Dwarka in a very sorry state. We have seen him answering questions by Yudhishthir about the destruction of the Yaduvamshis, and then his own bewilderment at the disappearance of Krishna. And then the magical thing happens, that amidst all this desolation and confusion and sorrow, Arjun, he once again recollects the message given to him by Krishna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, essentially the Bhagavad Gita. And thinking about the Bhagavad Gita, he pacifies himself and then strongly attaches himself to the spiritual conception after having given up all his attraction for the material notion. So this is where we ended in the last week's lecture. We'll start from verse 32. Nishammaya Bhagwan Maragam Samstam Yadu Kulasya Cha Swapathaya Matim Chakre Nibdhatma Yudhishtharaha. Upon hearing of Lord Krishna's returning to his abode, and upon understanding the end of the Yadu dynasty's earthly manifestation, Maharaj Yudhishthira decided to go back home, back to Godhead. So, as I had mentioned, that previous set of verses, Arjuna had spoken about the annihilation of the Yadavas and indirectly about the disappearance of Krishna. And based on Arjuna's introspection, it was also clear that he had already embarked on the path of renunciation. So remember, this was a conversation that was happening between Yudhishthira and Arjuna. So at this point, Yudhishthira is reflecting. So Nishammaya means he now reflects on Bhagwan Margam. So Margam means path, Marg. Bhagwan means Krishna. So this can be interpreted as Yudhishthira now reflecting on the arrangements that are made by Krishna. So Bhagwan Margam is that what are the arrangements that Krishna has made, and how do I best avail of them? Bhagwan Margam also means that he began to meditate on the path back to Godhead. So Margam leading to Bhagwan, similar meanings. So according to the general understanding of the Acharyas, and this verse reflects that the Pandavas were samstham. So samstham means, so stham is like sthan, like a place, and sam means complete or proper. So samsthan means that they had a firm place with Krishna. So essentially, samsthan reflects the fact that the Pandavas, they're eternal devotees of Krishna, both in his manifest and unmanifest pastimes. So Yudhishthira is now reflecting on the fact that the manifest pastimes of Krishna have now ended. So he is now looking to so so it says Swahapathaya. So Swahapathaya refers to the path to the eternal abode of Krishna. So he's saying that Krishna has his Krishna has now made the arrangements for me to go back to him, to his eternal abode, and become a part of his eternal pastimes. So Yudhishthira understands that the Yadus have left, and then it says Chaswaha. So Cha means and Swaha means self. So he also infers that Krishna himself has left. And it's not really a leap of faith, because Arjuna, in not so many words, but repeatedly he has said that he had this powers. Now Krishna is not there, so he does not have these powers. He's missing Krishna. So Arjuna has also, even though he does not say that, does not talk, so he says that the Yadus have annihilated one another. That he speaks explicitly, but he doesn't speak that way about Krishna. But implicitly he speaks. So Chaswaha means that Yudhishthira has now concluded with a fair degree of certainty that along with the Yadus, Krishna has already also gone, which means that he has finished his manifest pastimes. And then considering his role as samstham, considering his role as an eternal associate of Krishna, so he understands that his own manifest pastimes have also now come to an end. And one may think that, is Yudhishthira actually qualified to think like that? And the answer is yes, because it's not just Yudhishthira thinking about him, but the sages also consider Yudhishthira to be a pure devotee of Krishna. So if you remember in the 12th chapter of this canto, Sutta Goswami was glorifying Yudhishthira as follows. He says, "O Brahmanas, the opulence of the king was so enchanting that the denizens of heaven aspired for it. But because he was absorbed in the service of the Lord, nothing could satisfy him except the Lord's service." And Srila Prabhupada says this is the characteristic of a pure devotee, and nothing else but Krishna's service have any source of enjoyment for them. So what does Yudhishthira do? So he is now Nimbrata Atma. So Nimbrata Atma translates to lonely and alone. And one explanation is that is his mood in the absence of Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada gives a deeper explanation that Nibrata Atma means that all by himself, Yudhishthira now decides to renounce. So, that mood is a little different from the typical mood that Yudhishthira displays. So if you see in the Mahabharata, by nature Yudhishthira is very collaborative. Any decision that he makes, he consults with his brothers, he takes permission of the elders, he checks with the priests, and that's why he was so well liked, that he did not act whimsically, and he gave everybody an opportunity to participate. But here we see a different Yudhishthira, that Nibrata Atma, that without consulting anybody, all by himself, what is the decision that he takes? He takes the decision to renounce. And the difference is that when one is convinced about spiritual decisions, then one needs to take them fearlessly, and one needs to take them regardless of what anybody else may say or think. So we see a similar occurrence in Chaitanya Leela, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu takes the decision to accept sannyas. And again, in Chaitanya Leela, we see that Mahaprabhu by nature is very collaborative. He would not take any decisions without getting the permission and the blessings of his associates. He had that mood of humility. But this decision, which was perhaps one of the biggest decisions in his life, he had an old mother, he had a young wife, he had no children, he was 24 years of age, but Nibrata Atma, that all by himself he takes the decision, and then he informs the people. So this is also the single-minded determination that Krishna glorifies. He actually considers that to be an essential prerequisite to spirituality, because the matter of fact is that being in the material world, being surrounded by conditioned souls, the flow of the recommendations and the advice will be against the spiritual soul. So that's why Krishna says in 241, Vyasatmika buddhi ekahe kurunanda. And then late in the next verse, he says that those who are not fixed or resolute in purpose, devotional service for them is very, very difficult. So that's the reason one has to be fixed and resolute, because you're swimming against the current. And the more people that you link with yourself, the more difficult it will be to swim. So we see Yudhishthira instantly taking on this mood of Nibrata Atma. Srila Prabhupada has a fairly long purport in which he makes many preaching points. I'm not going to read the purport. I'll just summarize the points that Prabhupada makes, and as usual, I would recommend you to read it. It's a kind of Prabhupada, because this is an indication of a soul making a journey back to Krishna. So Prabhupada uses that to preach to us the whole science of Krishna consciousness in a succinct way. So he says that the living being is constitutionally a servitor. So these are not quotes, but I'm paraphrasing again for the sake of conciseness, that every living being constitutionally is a servitor and not one who is served. But under illusion, such a person is looking to get served, whereas in reality he continues to serve his senses. Then the real satisfaction of the soul is in the service of Krishna. And because the soul is used to that satisfaction, it mistakenly looks for it in matter. And Prabhupada gives the analogy that is not satisfying because it is not what intrinsically the soul can be satisfied by. Just as a person who is hungry can only be satisfied by food. And then Prabhupada comes to the punchline over here. He says that, thus the whole world is full of hungry living beings. And then he writes in italics for emphasis, the hunger is for the spiritual atmosphere. And then he concludes that such hunger can be satisfied in the association of Lord Mukunda, the Lord who awards his devotees the transcendental pleasure of liberation. And the final point that he makes is, therefore, one who has this association cannot be attracted by the so-called food, shelter, defense, and sense gratification of the material world, even if they are relished by the denizens of the heavenly planet. So these are concepts that Prabhupada speaks often and he repeats for emphasis. So once Prabhupada was giving a class in New York and he was making this very similar points, that the nature of the soul is to serve Krishna, Krishna is God. And then somebody asked him that, Swamiji, why do you keep making the same points over and over again? And then Srila Prabhupada said, because you don't get it. So for our benefit, Srila Prabhupada repeats the points, you in the purports, in the lectures, and we will look at it, and when we say, oh, okay, we know it. So yeah, we know it, but we don't get it, and that's why Prabhupada he repeats it for emphasis. Next verse, 33. Prathapya anushrutya dhananjana yoditam nasham yodhanam bhagavad gatim chatam ekant bhaktya bhagvatya dhoksaje nivishit atma pararam samshrataha. Kunti, after overhearing Arjun telling of the end of the Yadu dynasty and the disappearance of Lord Krishna, engaged in the devotional service of the transcendental personality of Godhead with full attention, and thus gained release from the course of material existence. So the conversation between Yudhishthir and Arjun was not secretively done, and we see that mood nowadays. It may be difficult for us to accept that, but at least in the Dwapar Yuga, even until the Dwapar Yuga, there was a lot of transparencies. The conversation between Vidur and Dhritarashtra took place in the open. The conversation between Yudhishthir and Bhim took place in the open. And now this conversation between Arjun and Yudhishthir also took place in the open. And Kunti Devi was also sitting and listening to it. So some of the phrases that are used over here should be accepted not in a literal sense, but in a conventional sense. So one of the phrases that we use over here is that Nasham Yaduna. So the destruction of the Yadu dynasty. So we discussed in the past that the Yadus were not destroyed. That was Krishna's pastime. Later on, this will also be discussed in a little bit more details, I think in the very next verse. But Nasham Yadunam over here is conventionally true, that the Yadus were destroyed. Without going too much into the philosophical details. Then similarly, Bhagavad Gatim Cha, disappearance of the Lord, is again used conventionally. So it's not that Kunti Devi believed that Krishna died or Krishna abandoned them, but it speaks about the external manifestation of the pastime, that Bhagavad Gatim Cha, that Krishna disappeared or Krishna left. In the commentaries for in this context, disappearance of Krishna, it is explained that the Narayan form of Krishna went to Prabhashetra and from there departed to Vaikuntha, whereas Krishna and Balram, they remained in Dwarka, in the spiritual Dwarka. So more of this will be spoken when in a few verses down, when we talk about Krishna's disappearance. So Jiva Goswami, in terms of Bhagavad Gatim Cha, he says that he quotes a verse later on from the Bhagavatam. Most of the demigods and other higher beings led by Brahma could not see Krishna as he entered his own abode, since he did not reveal his movements. But some of them did catch sight of him, and they were extremely amazed. Just as ordinary men cannot ascertain the path of a lightning bolt as it leaves a cloud, the demigods could not trace out the movements of Lord Krishna as he returned to his abode. So there is a slight reference over here to correct somebody understanding Bhagavad Gatimcha as disappearance of Krishna. And then later on, this topic is dealt with more exhaustively in a few verses down. The important thing in this verse is, what was the effect on Kunti Devi? So this news, it creates a deep sense of detachment. So it says Upararamaha Shamshataha. Samshataha is material existence, and Uprarama literally means sudden disappearance, or it also means becoming inactive like an aged person. So both of them qualitatively pointing to Kunti Devi withdrawing from the material interactions. So, so the first effect that it had, not the first or the second, it seemed to have there concurrently, but the one effect that she had was she developed a deep sense of material renunciation. And what happened along with that? Ekantya bhakti. So along with this material detachment, she manifested a strong attachment to Krishna. And how did that manifest? Ekantya bhakti, which is unalloyed devotion. To who? Bhagavate Adhok Sajay. So unto Shri Krishna. Adhok Sajay is one who is beyond material senses. So the name is used over here because Kunti Devi gave up her material interactions. She gave up the senses by which she was interacting with the material world, and now she turned to one who is beyond material senses. Bhagavati Adhok Sajay. And what was the mood? Ekante Bhakti. Unalloyed devotion, then Niveshitatma, with full attention. So exclusive devotion with full attention. So the verse essentially talks about the process of bhakti, that one becomes materially detached and one fully turns all the faculty, all their senses, all their efforts to the exclusive devotion of Krishna. So this is the process of Shuddha Bhakti that Kunti Devi practiced. And what was the result of it? The result of it is, thus she gained release from the course of material existence, which means that she went back to Godhead. Next verse, 34. Yaya harad bhuvo bharam tam tanum vijaha vaja kantakam kantake neva dvayam chapi situhu samam. The Supreme Unborn, Lord Shri Krishna, caused the members of the Yadu dynasty to relinquish their bodies, and thus he relieved the burden of the world. This action was like picking out a thorn with a thorn. The both of them are the same to the controller. So this topic was spoken about 10 verses ago by Arjun, when he spoke about the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty, verse 24. And at that time he was reporting it. He was reporting it as an event. This is what has happened. Here it is spoken from a more philosophical perspective. And Prabhupada in the purport writes, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur suggests that the rishis like Shaunaka and others who were hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Sutta Goswami at Naimisharanya, were not happy to hear about the Yadus dying in madness of intoxication. So this is just the mood of empathy from one devotee to another. So unlike the material world where one's success is defined by another's failure, in the spiritual world, the devotees actually lament the failure of another and celebrate the success of others. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that the sages of Naimisharanya, when they heard that the Yadus had become intoxicated and fought with one another and killed one another, and knowing the Yadus to be associates of Krishna and devotees, in their heart they were unhappy. So Sutta Goswami, in order to pacify them and also to reveal a deeper philosophical truth, he speaks this verse. So there are four possible interpretations of this verse, and then that gives different aspects of this pastime of the Yadus killing one another, and also philosophical perspectives. So what I'm going to do is basically what the acharyas have done is that they have walked through this cause and effect to come to the conclusion. And it's a little involved, so I'm going to do it in the opposite way. So I'll present the conclusion first, and then basically go through the four possible interpretation of this verse, of this verse, and it still adds up. I felt it was simpler this way. So the understanding that is given to us is that there were two categories of Yaduvamshis. They were one who were amshas of the devas. They were expansions of the devas, and on the order of Krishna, they had descended to become his associate and assist him in his pastime. There is a second category of the Yadus who were Krishna's parishads. They were eternal associates of Krishna, and they travel with Krishna wherever he goes to perform his pastimes. They were also part of the Yaduvamshi. Now, for the duration of the Bhaumi Leela, which is this particular pastime, the Yadus who were amshas of the devas entered into the body of the Yadus who were the parishads. So it's not that there were two categories of associates. Some of them were parishads and some of them were devas. The same person was carrying both of them. They were carrying the parishads are being taken as a primary person, and they were also carrying the amshas, the deva amshas within them. When this particular pastime at Prabhas Kshetra happened, then it is mentioned that the parishads, they separated from the deva amshas. The deva amshas were killed, or at least the bodies were killed, and then they returned to their position in Swarga. The parishads, they disappeared, and they continued in the non-manifest pastimes in spiritual Dwarka. And all this happened under the influence of Krishna's internal energy. So this explanation is based on the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam and is given by Srila Sanatana Goswami in Bhagavad Amrita. So now that we understand the lay of the land, so to speak, let us look at this verse from different perspectives. So when the verse says relinquishing the bodies, so it means the body of the Yadus. So this is the body which consisted of the Devas. So Krishna, he removed the burden of the earth, Bhuva. He removed the burden of the earth, which also arises from him. Because ultimately, even the asuras are jivas who are coming from Krishna. So they are both compared to thorns. And in the verse it says, Ishitu Samam. That Krishna considered them both to be the same because they're both his children. They're both jiva. The only difference is that one of them is serving him and the other one is causing him pain. So that's how the analogy of the thorn is explained, that when a thorn gets embedded in your body, it causes you pain. That is the position of the asuras. And when we use the thorn, another thorn, to remove the first thorn, then even though by nature they are both thorns, one of them is rendering service and one of them is rendering disservice. So Krishna used one of the thorn, which was the devas, to remove the other thorn, which is the asuras. So here the context is Krishna using the yadus to annihilate the miscreants in the world. So there is no talk of any miscreants within the Yaduvamshi. All the Yaduvamshis are being regarded uniformly as the favorable thorn, as the thorn that is rendering to service to Krishna. And then once he had removed the burden on the earth, then the verse says that he gave it up. So gave it up means that the Deva Amshas returned to their position in the heavenly kingdom. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains this with an analogy, and in the analogy he extends this explanation. So the analogy that he uses is that one may say Devadatta gave up his cloth. So this does not mean that the cloth of Devadatta ceased to exist. The cloth is still existing, only that it's not with Devdutt anymore. Similarly, when it is said by Sutta that Krishna gave up his body, which is comprised of the Deva Amsha, it means that he gave up his association with the Devas, who now return to their heavenly planets. So giving up something does not mean destroying it. It just means giving up the association. So for the duration of this Bhawame Leela, the Devas were associating with Krishna, and now Krishna, he gave up this association and they returned to their planet. If we were to extrapolate this analogy, then saying that Devadatta gave up his cloth does not mean that Devadatta is without cloth. And the explanation is that even though Krishna gave up his association with those yadus that represented the Devamshas, he continued his association with those who were parishats. So he did not deprive everybody of his personal association. So another understanding of this verse is that it talks about the interaction between the two jivas that occupied the body of the Yadavas, the Devamshas and the Parishats. So in that context, it could be understood that with the help of the Parishats, Krishna caused the Devamshas to return to the heavenly kingdom, while the Parishas gave up their material body and continued in the Nitya Leela of Krishna in a spiritual form. So the two thorns over here are the Parishads and the Devamshas. So with one thorn, which is the Parishad, Krishna removed the other thorn, which was the Devamsha. And then the Parishads gave up the body, the material body, and in the spiritual body, they continued their service to Krishna. Third explanation is given by Jiva Goswami in Paramatma Sandarbha. And he says that one should consider giving up of the body in a more figurative way. And then he cites the instance of Lord Brahma. So this happens in the 3rd canto, chapter 20th, where we see that Lord Brahma, as he goes through the process of creation, he is repeatedly giving up his body. But the understanding there is that he's giving up a particular attitude. So Jiva Goswami says that we can understand this also in the same way, that Krishna came to this Bhaume Leela with the attitude, with the bhav of relieving the burden of the impious people and protecting the devas. Now that he had achieved that mission, he gave up that attitude. So Jiva Goswami says that the bhavas are like shadow representations of the Lord, and in this verse they are compared to thorns. So by one attitude, that now I have accomplished my mission, he gave up the other attitude that I have to stay here to annihilate the demons, and thus Krishna went back to the spiritual world. The fourth understanding of this is given by Arjuna in verse 25 to 26, where he says that Krishna engaged the stronger and the larger yadus to kill the weaker and the smaller yadus, and then gave them up also to perish. So similar statement is made by Uddhav when he's speaking to Vidur, 3rd canto. So he says that after the end of the battle of Kurukshetra, the Lord said, the abatement of the earth's great burden, 18 Akshunis, has now been effected with the help of Drona, Bhishma, Arjuna, and Bhima. But what is this? There is still the great strength of the Yadu dynasty born of myself, which may be a more unbearable burden. When they quarrel amongst themselves, influenced by intoxication, with their eyes red like copper because of drinking madhu, then only will they disappear. Otherwise, it will not be possible. On my disappearance, this incident will take place. So this is Krishna using the stronger yadus as one thorn to remove the weaker yadus as the second thorn, and then cause the stronger yadus to give up their body. So the fourth interpretation is stated here for completeness, but not cogent in this particular verse, because remember that Sutta Goswami is speaking this verse to assure the sages of Naimisharanya that the destination of the yadus, the characteristics of yadus, notwithstanding this pastime, continues to be glorious. So the fourth one points more to the apparent manifestation of the pastime, yadus drinking, fighting, killing one another, but it's still put here for the sake of completeness. So, so I'll quickly summarize. The four possible explanations are based on the consideration of the burden, what constitutes as the burden, what constitutes as the body, and what constitutes as the thorns. So in the first case, the burden was the asuras or adharma. The bodies was the devas, and the thorn was the devas and the asuras. So this was that Krishna used the devas to annihilate the asuras, and then the devas returned to their heavenly kingdom. In the second explanation, the burden is the devas, the yadus who were devas. The body is the manifest body of the yadus, and the two thorns are the devas and the parishads. And the explanation is that Krishna used the parishads to remove the devas, and then the parishads gave up the material body of the yadus. The third was the burden is the mood to vanquish the demons. The body is attitude, and the thorns are these two attitudes. So one attitude was to vanquish the demons, and the second attitude was completion of the completion of the vanquishing of the demons. So the explanation here is that Krishna, with the help of one attitude, that the reason I came has now been accomplished, gave up the other attitude, that of vanquishing the demons, and he returned back to the spiritual world. The fourth is that the burden is the yadus. The body is the physical body of the yadus, and the thorns are the stronger and the weaker yadus. So Krishna engaged the stronger yadus to kill the weaker yadus, and then cause the stronger yadus to perish. So all these four explanations of the verse are simultaneously correct, and they just churn the pastime for more nectar. Specifically, they all indicate a glorious position of the yadus. And Jiva Goswami, he states in his commentary in the 11th canto, 31st chapter, he states specifically that the so-called fight among the members of the Yadu dynasty was actually a display of the Leela Shakti, Krishna's pastime potency, since Krishna's personal associates are never subject to ordinary birth and death like conditioned souls. Okay, I'll stop here and see if there is any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, this last verse with the four explanations. So that it seems like basically it's like it's giving up old ideas or old this thing to make room for new things, right? I mean, whether it is giving up the body, or whether it is giving up the attitude, or whether it is giving up like asuric mentality, to basically make room for like better things, or like different, I mean,
for different things. So I would agree with that. Not necessarily better things, because better things would indicate that there was an inferiority associated with the yadus, but for different things, because the point that was made is that Krishna's past Leela had completed, a different era was coming in.
Right,
and,
change. Like,
right.
For a change, basically.
For a change.
So what I'm wondering is like Yudhishthira Maharaj, then he decided to like give up his body. That's what we read, that I mean, he like, since he understood that Krishna is going, and then he's wrapping up, so he also decided to leave. So I'm just wondering, like, why didn't, or what made him like not change his attitude and like change his body, like, or like give up his body, versus, or basically like like for us, I mean, even like, we might also say that, okay, this like, I mean, I want to change, and I will give up this body rather than giving up my attitude. So what defines basically changing the situations?
In Yudhishthir's case, there were two reasons. There are two reasons that is given. So one is the understanding that Yudhishthir is an eternal associate of Krishna, and knowing that Krishna had wound up this pastime, so he basically is preparing to accompany Krishna in his subsequent pastimes. This is even though the pastime, the disappearance of the Pandavas is played out differently in the Mahabharata, but there is a conversation that happens between Yudhishthir and Indra in Svarglok, where Yudhishthir asks Indra that where am I to go? And Indra says, I have no idea. I have no control over you. You go wherever Krishna will want you to go. Just be prepared for wherever he would like you to go. When I was reading the verse, I was actually thinking of that particular exchange from Mahabharata. That was Yudhishthir's mood. That now that Krishna has wound up this pastime, it's time for me to accompany him in his subsequent pastime. The second reason that is given is Yudhishthir's is the sense of renunciation that appears in Yudhishthir, which Srila Prabhupada comments extensively on, is the right thing to do at the right time. That Yudhishthir had gone through all the ashrams, he had married, he had children, he was the emperor of the world, but now he was at that stage in his life where it was time for him to give up his material involvement. So he was doing the right thing at the right time. So generally these two are considered to be the reason why Yudhishthir is given. The third reason, which is actually negated by Srila Prabhupada, which is given and given by Sutta Goswami, so it's not that it's there. So Sutta Goswami says that Yudhishthir, understanding the age of Kali to be coming, gave up. And Srila Prabhupada says that one should not consider Yudhishthir to be scared of the age of Kali. This verse comes later on, because he's a pure devotee of Krishna, he has nothing to fear of Kali. But an apparent reason is that Yudhishthir did not want to be around when irreligiosity and sinfulness would increase. So your question was, how does it apply to us? Given the fact that at least we don't have the conception that we are ready to be Krishna's personal associates in his subsequent pastimes, the point you're making is probably more appropriate for us. Is the mood of is the change of attitude. So we don't have to give up our body. We don't have to forcibly renounce things around us. But the more appropriate thing for us is to change our attitude, to become more inclined towards spiritual advancements.
Thank you, Guruji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for the explanation, Prabhuji. But I have little bit lack of understanding with the second explanation, Prabhuji, the Devamsa and Parishads. So you mentioned that earlier I am with the understanding that some are eternal associates and some are like demigods who came in, but here like the Devamsas also entered into the bodies of Parishads. So at that place, if you can little bit give explanation that will be helpful.
This is this was something that was actually so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was amongst the amongst the prominent philosophers to speak more about it, and then following his footsteps, the Goswamis, this notion of combined incarnation that we see in Chaitanya Leela, his associates, there says a combined incarnation of Lalita and Vishakha, or Sarup Damodar is combined incarnation of I forget whom, but that those points are made. So this is that notion of combined incarnation, that the Parishads came and the Devamshas entered the body of Parishads. So you can consider them as combined incarnations. And when the pastime, one of the explanation of the verses is when Krishna's pastime had ended, then the Parishads caused the Devas to return to their position in the heavenly kingdom, and they disappeared themselves. So the two thorns are the Parishads and the Devamshas.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you very much for the explanation, Prabhuji. Just a comment that for one verse, this many layers of understanding. Recently, I am hearing from one of my friend who is more Sanskrit inquisitive. He was telling that if you know Sanskrit, like you can read the Bhagavad Gita verse itself and you can understand. But this verse is a clear proof that one can never understand scriptures without a spiritual master. Because
that is true, and that's why we rely so much on the realization of the acharyas.
yes, Prabhuji, how deep our scriptures are. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hare Krishna. One example given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita about combined incarnation is Haridas Thakur, who is described as a combined incarnation of Lord Brahma and Prahlad Maharaj. Just a little comment.
Thank you. Yeah. There is a book, Deepa Gandakesh.
Gaura Gandakesh Deepika.
Gaura Gandakesh Deepika, which talks about the various associates in Chaitanya Leela and their spiritual position. So that talks about this. But yeah, that's a good example of Haridas Thakur. Thank you.
I have one little other query, and that is just the other day we were celebrating Janmashtami and Radhastami like that, and we heard that, like for example, the Manjaris and the Gopis, they were all expansion of the Srimati Radharani's body, and I was thinking that the Gopas and the Gopis, and especially the Yadu Vangsa, because they're eternal associates of Krishna, that I mean, I'm thinking how their bodies could be material bodies, because I heard you repeatedly saying they give up their material bodies, and it's like a little bewildering, that because they're coming, as eternal associates and like that, and are their bodies actually material bodies? I'm just wondering.
So your situation is similar to the situation of the sages of Naimisharanya, that they were not very happy to hear about the plight of the Yaduvamshis. The material relationship, at least for the Yaduvamshis, is not very different from us. So the Yaduvamshis, like us, or the Parishads of Krishna like us, they have an eternally spiritual body. And when they come to the material world, they take a material body. The difference is that they take one, we are given one. That's the only difference. But the distinction is always there. So, we also, we are also jivas, spiritual being. We are also occupying a material body. We also have an eternal relationship with Krishna. We are also in our intrinsic position, pure devotees of Krishna. Difference between us and Yadus is that we have forgotten, they have not. But constitutionally, there's not much of a difference.
Thank you. Thank you. I like that explanation that we are given and they take. That explains it.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we'll go to the next verse, 35. Yatha matsyadirupani date jayadyatanaha bhubarakshpato yena jahutachkalevaram. The Supreme Lord relinquished the body which he manifested to diminish the burden of the earth. Just like a magician, he relinquishes one body to accept different ones, like the fish incarnation and others. So, just as the stages of Naimisharan, they are recovering from this notion of the Yadus giving up the body, Sutta Goswami lands a bigger one on them. He now is talking about Krishna relinquishing his body. So, if anything, this is even more bewildering. For the Yadus to give up the body, we went through the 4 possible explanations, and it's it's relatable and acceptable. But now we are talking about Krishna, Sachitananda Vigraha. Now we are talking about him relinquishing his body. So both these verses have extensive commentaries, and the reason is because not only do they talk about the past time, they also surface important philosophical tattvas, and that's why the acharyas take time to comment on it. So what Srila Prabhupada has done is that he has taken the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami. He has combined it and added his own commentary on it in order to explain us this concept. So I'm not going to read out his purport because obviously you can, but what I'm going to do is follow through the points that he makes in the purport. And because Prabhupada he was always dealing with space limitation, so he speaks very concisely, and I can elaborate over there because I have access to the commentaries of Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, so I can elaborate over there. So how does one understand this verse? How does one understand the apparent death of Krishna? So the first proposition is that it's very easy to understand this. God is material, and anything that is material comes to an end. So this is essentially atheism of the person saying that why is it difficult to understand it? That God is material things have an end. So I can completely accept the fact that Krishna died. This point is very obliquely refuted, and the reason is that because this verse is appearing in the Bhagavatam, the acharyas are not expecting to deal with atheists over here. So they quote the 4.6 verse of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says that although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. And there are, of course, hundreds of verses that they could have spoken to establish the existence of God and his spirituality, but they leave it at this, making a token effort. Second point is, the person might say, fine, I accept that God is spiritual, but perhaps Krishna is not God. That's why he died. So Jiva Goswami, he quotes the verse from Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 3rd chapter, 8th verse, where it says, then the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, who is situated in the core of everyone's heart, appeared from the heart of Devaki in the dense darkness of night, like the full moon rising on the eastern horizon, because Devaki was of the same category as Sri Krishna. So the point over here that is being made, so this is the birth pastime of Krishna. The point that is being made over here is that Krishna is indeed the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one might say, okay, I accept the fact that God is spiritual. I accept the fact that maybe Krishna is God. But isn't it possible that when Krishna descended to the material world, he took a material body? So this is refuted. That the point is made is that Krishna is Brahman in human form. But unlike the humans, his body is not material but completely spiritual because he is Brahman. In Brahma Samhita 5.1, Lord Brahma clearly states, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadi Radhe Govinda Sarvakaran Karanam. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he actually quotes scriptural references cautioning one against thinking that Krishna can ever have a material body. So he quotes the Brihad Vishnu Smriti, where he says that, Prabhupada quotes this in his own purport also, where he says that one who considers the body of Krishna to be material should be driven out from all rituals and activities of Shruti and Smriti. And if one by chance sees his face, one should at once take bath in the Ganges with one's clothes on to rid himself of infection. So this is the extent of an offense that a person is considered to commit if they consider Krishna's body to be material. In Vaishampayan Sahasra Nam Stotra, it is said that Krishna is Amrit Samo Amrit Vapur, that he has a body and limbs that are Amrit Sasmo, that are immortal, which means that they are spiritual. So now our conscientious objector will say that if you are saying that Krishna's body is spiritual, then why did not everybody see Krishna as God? Why did everybody not see Krishna as somebody who is fully spiritual? So to contest that, the Acharyas quote Krishna's verse from Bhagavad Gita 7:25, where he says that I am never manifest to the foolish and intelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am inborn and infallible. So this also contains the key to understanding the disappearance of Krishna. Just like the appearance of Krishna is perceived differently by different people, the disappearance of Krishna is also seen differently by different people. One of the famous verses that talks about this difference in perception of the same personality appears when Krishna enters into the wrestling arena. So this is in the 10th canto, 43rd chapter, verse 17. And the verse says that the various groups of people in the arena regarded Krishna in different ways when he entered it with his elder brother. The wrestlers saw Krishna as a lightning bolt, the men of Mathura as the best of males, the women as Cupid in person, the coward men as the relative, the empire's rulers as a chastiser, his parents as a child, the king of Bhojas as death, the unintelligent as the supreme lord's universal form, the yogis as the absolute truth, and the Vishnis as the worshipable deity. Same person, different people perceiving differently based on their bhav. Same pastime, different people perceiving differently based on their bhav. So this also contains the key of how Krishna's disappearance is perceived as differently. So the question now comes that how can Krishna be both material and spiritual at the same time? And I believe it is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur who uses the pastime of Shishupal to explain this. So he quotes from the Vishnu Puran 4.5.15 where he says that, so this is the time when Krishna is killing Shishupal. So the verse in Vishnu Puran says, seeing the Lord with the chakra in his hand, which has a mass of rays aimed at destroying him, his force of hatred disappeared. Shishupal then saw the Lord, the Supreme Brahman, a form of indestructible power. So what do we understand from this verse? That Shishupal, he was accustomed to seeing Krishna's form from his very childhood. He was the cousin of Krishna, but he never saw the Swarup. He never saw the actual form of Krishna. So what was he seeing? So he was seeing a form of Krishna constructed by Maya. Because if Shishupal was indeed seeing the Swarup of Krishna, then he would have long ago become liberated. He would not have been envious to Krishna. So that verse in Vishnu Puran shows that when Shishupal was able to see Krishna's spiritual form, then all his faults immediately dissolved. That's the benediction that one gets. So all throughout his life, Krishna was displaying for the believers a spiritual form and for the non-believers a form that was made of Maya. So it is important for us to peg this point because it is this form that was made out of Maya that Krishna is going to discard. So that is why the acharyas have brought us to this point in their explanation. Now, for the sake of completeness, the acharyas talk about another objection, that how can you say that Krishna has a spiritual form when we know that Krishna is changing forms? And a reference to that is given in this particular verse of Matsya Adi. So the understanding is that Krishna at one point was Matsya, but then he's no longer Matsya. So that means we know that Krishna gave up that form of Matsya. So in reality, the Lord Date, so Date means that he maintains the various forms and he maintains the various forms. Srila Prabhupada says that the word Dhitva is not used. Dhate is used. So Dhate means that he maintains. Dhitva means that he accepted for the occasion. So slight difference between the word. So the point is that Krishna's form as Matsya is eternally maintained by Krishna. It's not that he accepted the form for a particular pastime, and when that pastime finished, he gave up that form. But When Matsya disappeared from this universe, he appeared in another universe. And so on and so forth for all the forms of Krishna. So just like Krishna is eternal, his forms are eternal, and they are eternally existing in his Nitya Leela. So even when he appears to give up a form, the form is still existing. That is the illusion. Jiva Goswami, he translates Natha of the verse to, so Srila Prabhupada translates it to magician, and Jiva Goswami translates it to theatrical actor in this context, to show that just like a theatrical actor, he takes on different moods, bhavs. So in one play he might be a villain and he takes on that villainous bhav. In another play he may be the police and he takes on the policeman bhav. It does not mean that the bhav has disappeared, and it does not mean that it is eternally associated with him. It just means that for the sake of a pastime, Krishna takes on a particular mood, and when the manifest pastime ends, then he takes on a different mood. So now we come to the crux of the objection, that this pastime clearly says that Krishna was killed. So that is there in the 10th canto. In the 11th canto, we see that there was an arrow shot in Krishna's foot, and he apparently died. How can this be explained? So in order to explain this, Sutta Goswami, in the verse, he calls Krishna a magician. So on a stage, a magician will perform several acts that defy the rules of nature or defy logic. So they may take out a bird from a hanky, or they may cut a person in half. So similarly, the acts of Krishna, they are not clearly discernible. They defy logic, they defy the rules of nature. So one who simply sees them externally will always be amazed and bewildered, just like the spectators of a magician. But at the same time, the audience that are sitting in the magic show, they don't believe for one moment that a hanky has become a pigeon. They don't believe for one moment that the magician just cut somebody into two and joined the person again. So similarly, when the devotees, they look at all these magical occurrences of Krishna, so they just accept the fact that this is Krishna Leela, that Krishna is doing it for, and the purpose is going to be revealed later on, but it is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Krishna displays a false show of giving up his body. Just like a magician makes a false display of facts, Krishna does a false show. So the essence is that one accepts Krishna's magic. That when Krishna died, he appears to die. So this is where the notion of the inconceivability of Krishna becomes stronger. So the last point that is made over here by the objector is that the Bhagavatam says that when Krishna left, he left his body behind. How do we understand that? So this is actually completed in the next verse, but for the sake of completeness in terms of explanation, it's explained over here. So remember when we talked about the fact that based on how one perceives Krishna, Krishna is either spiritual or material. What is another place where Krishna's body adjusts to our perception? So we see that in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is displaying his universal form, and Srila Prabhupada says that this universal form is a godless display of opulence. And he says this universal form is completely material. He's not ascribing materiality to Krishna. He's ascribing materiality to those who perceive Krishna in that form. So in the same sense, it is said that, so the next verse will say Swatanva, that utilizing his own body, Krishna discarded the other body. And the other body was the body that was for the non-devotees. So Jiva Goswami, he says that the body, not his swarup that Krishna showed to the demons, was left behind. He relieved the burden of the earth and then withdrew the body. Krishna no longer had any interest in it. In Bhagavatam 3-11, it is said, Lord Shri Krishna, who manifested his eternal form before the vision of all on the earth, performed his disappearance by removing his form from the sight of those who were unable to see him as he is due to not executing the required penance. So the summation of all this is that Krishna, although unborn, attained the form of Maya, destroyed the burden of the earth, the demons, gave up this form that is dear to the demons, and returned to the spiritual world. So at the end of this, somebody might raise their hand and say, why does Krishna do all this? And the answer is that the acts of Krishna are meant to bewilder the atheists, to attract the agnostics, and to enthrall the devotees. So when the devotees hear about all this, they say Krishna is great. When the agnostics hear about this, they say, okay, I had this doubt. Now it is clarified. And when the atheists hear about it, they'll say, oh, I always told you, God is material, he died. God was born, God is dead, now there is no God. So Krishna has, in the same pastime, he is reciprocating with all the classes of the jivas according to their respective bhavs. Okay, we'll do one more verse, and then after that we can stop for discussions. This is a kind of a companion verse to the previous one. Verse 36. Yada mukundo bhagavan imam mahim jaho swatanva shramaniya satkataha tadahareva prati buddha chetisham abhadrahetu kalir anavavartata. When the personality of Godhead left this earth planet in his self-same form, from that very day, Kali, who had partially appeared, became fully manifest to create inauspicious conditions for those who are endowed with a poor fund of knowledge. So the part about Krishna leaving the earth with his self-same form, we already spoke about it in the previous verse, that Krishna left the earth in a spiritual body, leaving behind the body that was meant for the materialists according to their conception. Now, one should not consider this to be like the spiritual liberation of the jivas. So one may think that when the jivas are liberated, the soul leaves behind the material body, and the soul goes back to the spiritual body. The difference is that everything related to Krishna is done because he desires to do it. Everything related to Krishna is fully spiritual. So when we talk about our body, it is indeed material. And the body that Krishna leaves behind, the only reason it is considered material is because of the conception of those who are themselves materialistic. A very close example is the universal form of Krishna. That because the universal form of the Krishna is perceived by the materialist, it is considered to be material. But factually, everything concerning to Krishna is spiritual. So the other point that is made in this verse is the appearance of Kali. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, the age of Kali ensued just after the battle of Kurukshetra, but it could not exert its influence because of the presence of the Lord. The Lord, however, left this earthly planet in his own transcendental body. And as soon as he left, the symptoms of Kali Yuga, as were envisioned by Maharaj Yudhishthir prior to Arjun's arrival from Dwarka, began to manifest. And Maharaj Yudhishthir rightly conjectured on the departure of the Lord from the earth. So the age of Kali was first held back because of the presence of Krishna. So its reign, its time had begun at the right after the battle of Kurukshetra. But because Krishna was there, it was held back. So we know that between the end of the battle of Kurukshetra and the disappearance of Krishna, it wasn't a very long time. It was just about 36 years that had passed, and Kali Yuga was held back. When Krishna disappeared, then Kali Yuga manifested more strongly. When Shringi cursed Parikshit Maharaj, it manifested even more strongly. When Parikshit Maharaj left the planet, then Kali Yuga appeared even more strongly. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, then he put a pause on Kali Yuga for the next 10,000 years, after which Kali Yuga will manifest in its completeness. So in lecturing on this verse, Srila Prabhupada at one point says, Krishna left his so-called body just to befool the rascals, because the rascals are thinking Krishna is like us. Therefore, to bewilder them, Krishna leaves the Maya body so that they may think that Krishna is like us. In another lecture, he says that he left this body, he left this world in his original body. He has no such distinction. Sarvanjaya Satkatha. If his body is like our body, material body, then what is the use of hearing about his activity? Okay, so I'll stop over here, see if there's any comments or questions.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please explain humble obeisances. This is Nanda Gopal Das. Prabhu, regarding the atheistic bewildering reason, so what if Krishna had ascended with a spiritual body in front of the atheists? Wouldn't they have changed their opinion to become a devotee? That's not a possibility. And why would we have to bewilder them to make them more atheistic rather than changing them to the devotees?
So it's a good point. So there is a verse in which it comes in the context of one of the verses of the mantras of the Upanishad, where one asks Krishna that for those. So this is the verse in Upanishad where the mantra that says that such people eternally, they're atmaha, killers of the soul, they're eternally condemned to live in lower planetary systems. And then somebody, on hearing this verse, asks their guru that why does Krishna not save them? And the guru answers that because Krishna has no desire. So, so Krishna has a lot of mercy, but there has to be something that has to invoke his mercy. And his reciprocation is what's the right word? His reciprocation is not proportional; is disproportional. But even to get the disproportional, some effort has to be done. But the point is that the atheists don't do that effort. In fact, they do the opposite effort. They try to kill Krishna. They try to say that he does not have a body. They try to say that he does not he does not exist. And Krishna reciprocates with their mood that, you try and kill me. So as far as you are concerned, I will not exist. So that is the mood of yatha mam prapadyante. From a more practical perspective, this is looking at it from as followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is more merciful than Krishna. The reason is that such people are so far protected by their own ignorance. But if Krishna was to appear in the spiritual form, so because they're protected by their own ignorance, there is no further offenses that are committed by them. Somebody comes and says, I don't know Krishna, I don't care about him. That's fine. He's like, you don't bother me, I don't bother you. But now when Krishna is extending himself, he appears before them in his personal form. And then they start committing offenses against Krishna. So any hopes that they might have of making any spiritual advancements is vanquished, because they are now actively committing offenses. Earlier on, all that they were guilty of was not taking to devotional service. But now any opportunity they have for spiritual emancipation is gone, because they're actively committing offenses under the lotus feet of Krishna. So Krishna, in order to protect them from themselves, he keeps them away. So it's like if you have a child that is very naughty, and you can keep the child away from an elder, and the elder might know the child is naughty, but still there might not be any active animosity. But then the child comes in front of the elder and starts spitting on him and biting him. Now there is active antipathy that goes on. So that is one explanation that is given as to why Krishna, he hides himself from such person, why he erects this curtain of Maya between them. When he says that he extends his mercy to everyone, then this is also a form of mercy that is extending to the atheist to protect themselves from themselves.
Thank you, Prabhu. That sounds very, very wonderful. There is another question, if I have time to ask, or somebody else would. The another question is, we know Krishna appears every yuga to annihilate the demons and to re-establish the dharma. And now he leaves, and now the adharmic forces are becoming more stronger. Kali Yuga getting established. So it feels like that he hasn't achieved his purpose, meaning he came to re-establish dharma, which is not going to be the case because the Kali Yuga is entering. How to reconcile these two?
So this is a what-if scenario, Prabhu, that can you imagine what it would have been if Krishna had not appeared. Right? So we are living in a certain semblance where we have an opportunity to go to the temple and worship the deities, chant. Still there is truthfulness to a greater extent that is preserved. But what if Krishna had not appeared? Then the situation would have been much more horrible, which we get a glimpse of in the description of the state of affairs towards the end of Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is described. So Krishna's appearance is kind of like slowing down the inevitable decline of the materially conditioned soul. Those who are fortunate to take benefit of it, we don't see them again. They go back to Godhead. So when Krishna was there, then millions and millions of people went back to Godhead. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was there, then according to certain acharyas, that because he gave the benediction to Vasudev Datta, then each and every living entity in the universe at the time went back to Godhead. All that mercy is happening, but the inevitable flow is that there are still jivas who continue to be conditioned, who continue to be rebellious, and they continue to take the material world towards one particular direction, despite Krishna's effort to take it in another direction.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. One small question, Prabhuji. So the body that is Krishna is showing to the atheists, which is made of Maya. So that body is also real, or they just we perceive it, but really that is not there. How we have to that does mean that Krishna really left his body, or just we are thinking, or
it's a good question. I honestly, so I don't know what the Shastric answer for that is. If you go to Prabhas Kshetra, I actually went there and visited it. I visited the place. There is a samadhi of Krishna, where there is Krishna's body there. At least that's what the priests told me. This is a body that Krishna left behind. I'm not sure how bona fide it is. There's a temple over there, and there is worship that of Krishna that goes on over there. From the readings of the Bhagavatam, it is unclear whether Krishna actually left behind something that was considered to be material, or Krishna left behind this notion that there is a material body that I have discarded and gone to the spiritual world. So do not know the full answer to your question.
Sure, but that will be the body like normally non-believers see when Krishna was there, like kind of people like Duryodhana.
It is true, but one of the things that we've been doing is we've been trying to establish an analogy or a parallelism between this conception of Krishna's body and the universal form. And at least in the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada said the universal form is imaginary. So the material world is of course there. We can see, the universal form is manifested in different aspects of the material world. But the linkages of that to being Krishna's body, that is considered to be notional. So that's why I was making the other point, that whether Krishna left behind a conception that there's a material body that I left behind, just like the universal body. It is there, but it is not there. The material world is there, but it's not the universal body, but the conception is there, that this is the universe, that this is Krishna's universal body. Okay. Okay, so we'll end over here, and hopefully in the Wednesday discussion we should be able to finish this chapter. There are 20 more verses to be done. I don't believe they're as philosophically dense as the ones that we did now, so we should be able to go through them. And the week after that, we shall begin a brand new chapter, the 16th chapter, which will again reintroduce us to our main hero of the Bhagavatam, which is Parikshit Maharaj. So I'll end over here. Thank you. Vancha kalpatarubhayasya kripa sindhubhya cha patitnam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.